Cloud Chamber is a story about faith. Not so much in God, but maybe faith in science, faith in your family, and faith in yourself. But it's also an honest attempt at a new kind of story for the information age, where we mix gameplay with social discussion and found footage film. So what the heck is that? Well, I spent 3 years explaining to everybody from the Film Institute to the editor, to the screenwriter, to the game designer, to the programmers, to the film people, to the lighting, to everybody what Cloud Chamber is. And I think 3 years ago it took about 3 hours to explain. It won't take that today because now we can just show it. 1 year ago it took about 1 hour to explain, and that's mainly because we had our first trailer ready. So if you can play this film. So you can actually try it there. We've just test launched for 3 months in Denmark, and we're now getting ready to do the global launch within the next 6 months. I'm going to show it to you, but before that, just a few words about how we got to make it. From 1999 to 2009, I made 35 online stories because I basically fell in love with the idea that the next storytelling medium had to be the internet. It defines the way we find our love, the way we maintain our relationships to our families, the way we work, and so on. There's no reason the internet should not become the next big narrative medium. So since I started before there was any app store or any Facebook or even any revenue model at all, I had to do advertising, e-learning, and that sort of thing in order to finance these stories. So we did that, and I met my creative producer, Mikkel, and we've now done about 30 projects together. And in 2006, we made a discovery. We basically discovered that if we, on a single site, took short, mysterious film clips and mixed them with gameplay mechanics inside a social network, so people were discussing what was going on in the clips, we basically had a new way of telling stories where people would spend hours in there trying to figure out what the heck was going on. So the first one we did was TDC5, and that was actually a human resource project for a large telco. So we pretended that their customers were being kidnapped, and the employees had to solve the mystery of why this was happening. And then in 2007 to 8, we pretended we had a guy on board a research ship for 8 months. And we built an entire online community around him where only the users could really help him because there was a madman building a doomsday device in the bottom of the ship. And it was actually a recruitment campaign for the electrical engineering education. So we had kids spending hundreds of hours figuring out how electricity worked in order to save the world, which is kind of a good idea when you look back at it. In 2009, we did the same for 16 weeks up to the climate summit. And now, thanks to the Film Institute, we're actually able to make the step from campaign to something permanent, cultural, and paid for. So this one, the users actually have to pay for. One of the big steps was after I'd started talking to the Film Institute, I'd been producing my own stuff for all these years, and then I called Vibeke Windeløw, who's produced a lot of Lars von Trier's films like Breaking the Waves and so on. And I said, well, basically the Film Institute said to me, we'll help you on this, but you have to find somebody else to do the finances. You can't both direct and do the finances. We don't do that here. I'm very glad they did that. So I called Vibeke, I didn't know her at all, and I said, well, how about producing an internet mystery? And she said, no way, I make movies. And I pitched thousands of projects in order to get to make 35 commercial stories. So I knew how to pitch. So when she said no, I said, I know you've been one of the main forces behind the Danish film boom for the last 20 years, but you do know it's over, don't you? And she laughed very, very loudly and for a long time and invited me to coffee. And 6 months later, we were basically building Cloud Chamber. So what is it? Well, this is the landing page as it looks now. You can go there on the internet, and the intro film will play down there. And basically what you do is when you go in, you're entering a 3D WikiLeaks. So it's a large collection of confidential files that you have to discuss your way through with the other users, just like on Facebook. So you're basically trying to figure out what happened. And it's built on a landscape metaphor. So if you can play this movie and just take the sound down a little, you're basically navigating a data visualization landscape. So the characters have uploaded the fictional files to this database, and it's made a landscape out of them. So the higher the mountain, the more important the file. So it's like the dramaturgical, the excitement curve has actually become a landscape, and you're navigating the story as if it was spatial. So here you're entering a film file, and as you open it, it opens up like a console, like a Facebook console. And you can play the film on the left, you can full screen it. If you're a paying customer, it's in high def. And then on the right, there's basically the discussion topics. So once you've seen it, you basically start discussing what the hell happened. So I'm going to show you now the first film clip that the users see, and it's 3 minutes long. If you could play this movie and put the sound up again.
Okay, can someone please clue me in on what's going on? Thanks.
So clue me in on what's going on. That's really the key here, because one of the ways where this really departs from the film is that we take out all the important information. Basically, we've written a story on many layers, probably a few more layers than you would normally put into a film. And then we've decided which parts should be left out, because that's where the discussion starts. So if you, for example, choose one of these forums here, it basically opens up just like a Facebook group, and you can post, and you can like, and you can dislike. And you'll basically be rewarded for social interaction. So if other people like what you write, you will be rewarded with points, and that will allow you to progress further into the story. This is level 1 that we flew through at the start. You can zoom out and go up to a God's eye view, so you're looking directly down on it as a map. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 media files on level 1, and then you move on to part 2. There's 10 levels in all. We have 150 media files. And as you move through the levels, the database starts to degrade and corrupt, because basically the signal has invaded the media files and is now into the database algorithm. So some users are actually realizing that they're actually traveling into this signal that's come from another world. The way it's been working during the test version is that we had a paywall after level 3, so you could play the first 3 levels. That was 2 or 3 hours of playtime for free, and then a paywall would descend and you would pay about £8 for the rest of the experience. People who complete it normally spend about 25 hours in there. It's not 25 hours of watching time, it's 25 hours of discussion and so on. So there's 10 feature film quality clips like the one you just saw with the director and the photographer from The Killing. There is 10 video diaries, there's 80 documents, which is emails, scientific journals, personal diaries, photographs, and so on, maps. And then there's 30 documentary clips, because we entered into a collaboration with the European Space Agency. So they gave us totally free rein with their media database. So what we're basically doing is, as you travel into the characters and into the past, uncovering the story, you're also traveling outwards into the universe. So our goal was very much to give people an emotional relationship with where we are in the universe. Why do we do this? Well, there's 2 reasons. One is that I'm the child of 2 scientists. My mother is a microbiologist, my father is a geneticist, so science is part of what I find exciting about the world. But it's also very much about what we discovered making these things is that the background mythology is really the key here. If you're asking people to pretend that this is real and to discuss it as if it was real, they better not hit the edges of your fiction very quickly, because, you know, that just makes you feel like a jerk. You don't want to pretend you're something is real and then it's just a limited thing with not enough pieces in it. So here, bringing in the documentary elements literally opens up the fiction and makes it basically borderless. So what we're seeing in the discussions is that people have started linking to Wikipedia and other articles and so on. So we're really getting a discussion that's much bigger and much more user-generated than, you know, the narrative core that we've generated. And that's really quite intentional. It also gives us the idea, the possibility. We have a series arc. We actually view these first 10 levels as season 1 out of 4 seasons. And the series is all about what this signal is. And obviously, we don't answer that in the first season. But it does mean that we have to constantly have people in doubt about, is there a signal? Is it a natural phenomenon? Is it the voice of God? Or is it basically just Kathleen going insane? Because the signal only manifests itself in her head. Another thing that was very important to us was the music. We really look at this as almost like a virtual cinema, because people are logging in from all over from different sites at different time zones. And it's important to get them all in the same mood. That's one of the advantages of a cinema. Everybody in it is sort of tuned into the same mood. So it's very much a headphone experience where each level has its own signature electronic music track. And we license music from Burial and Santemüller and so on. It works beautifully with the sort of space footage and the textures in the film and so on. So it's very much an attempt at making it all of a piece. It's also very much an attempt at using the internet to tell a personal story. I grew up in a very, very scientific family, and there was at least one element in that family that was mentally unstable. And basically being taught about the universe and being dependent on somebody who's a little wobbly is a very scary experience. And if you at the same time want something that nobody understands, transmedia for example, there's a story there. And I was really raised by my parents with no God, absolutely no God. I don't know if you know it, but biology is the least religious profession in the world, thanks to Darwin. And the Danes are the least religious people in the world. So I really came from nothing. I was brought up with this. It wasn't explicitly said, and I think maybe it was a more popular way of looking at the world 40 years ago. Things are changing quite rapidly now. But I think, you know, this is really what I was brought up with. There's nothing out there. We're a microbe on a rock orbiting an unstable gas explosion. That's it. Get used to it. So we gave that to Jesper Christensen, the James Bond villain. That's his sort of take on it. And I really spent years, these 3 years, I've been talking to a lot of astrophysicists, and I can heartily recommend it. If you want stimulating friends, you should invite astrophysicists to your dinner parties, because these guys really have a creative mindset. But one of the journey we're trying to take the users on is that just 80 years ago, we thought that the Milky Way was the entire universe. There's 200 billion stars in the Milky Way, and the sun is just one of them. So you can be forgiven for thinking that that's all there is. But in the 1930s, the Mount Wilson Observatory went up in California, and we started seeing that there was a few flashes outside the galaxy. And we thought, okay, so we have our main universe, and there's a few stars outside. But it turned out that these were galaxies as well. And the last time we counted, there was 100 billion galaxies, and each galaxy has 100 billion or 200 billion stars. So the idea of us being alone is beginning to seem a little laughable, if you ask me. And we've just, I think 3 weeks ago, got confirmed that there's 40 billion Earth-like planets in our galaxy alone. And by Earth-like, we mean that they're close enough to the sun for the water to be liquid and not so far away that it's frozen. It's the Goldilocks zone. There's 40 billion potentially inhabited planets, and we have no idea what's on them. 1 week ago, as I stand here today, for the first time, telescopes saw weather on an Earth-like planet orbiting another star. So, 6 months from now, are we going to be seeing below the cloud cover? This is going to be the story of our generation, I think. There's so much going on right now with telescopes and data collection and computers working this out that any day now, our whole view of how the universe works is going to change radically. And that's really the story we're trying to tell. As the users discuss, they're basically unearthing a story about a girl whose mother died shortly after her birth. And her basically, with her two friends, discovering that her mother had discovered potentially a signal from another world, and that her father has kept it hidden for 40 years in this Peterson Institute, where you can see the floor plans up there. So when we're talking about transmedia here, we're not talking about jumping from TV to radio to internet and so on. No, we're actually putting all these different media types into the same channel, which is the internet, or a game. And that's really how I see transmedia. I've struggled with the sort of classical transmedia definition where you're trying to get a story to work across platforms, and I have to say, I don't think it works. I've tried it many, many times, and it's great for marketing purposes, and it's great to sort of extend the experience a little beyond the core experience. But trying to get an audience to have a core experience that skips between different modes of thought, I have to say that seems to me to be unrealistic. Unrealistic from an audience viewpoint, and not least unrealistic from a logistical and political viewpoint. If anybody has tried to negotiate between a TV station and a website and a book publisher, forget it. I mean, it's just not going to happen. These people don't drink beer in the same places. They don't talk the same language. They don't even like each other. Forget it. And the lawyers don't help. So what we're trying to do is really use the internet or the game medium as a way of creating a new kind of story that has all the depth and breadth of traditional books, movies, and so on, which we also love. And the stars are a big part of that, because one of the key terms, and if you're making notes here, this is a note you should make, is the cognitive cost of getting somebody to experience something new. And that's just huge. Basically, getting anybody to try anything new is like getting a cat into a bucket of water. Okay, so the stars help because you're lowering the cognitive cost. Oh, he's in Game of Thrones, that guy. Maybe I can trust this. And he's in James Bond, okay. And this is actually Barnaby's new assistant, right? Okay, so it can't be all bad. And then when we test launched, we started getting the first user comments. I stayed up till 3 a.m. This is amazing. I loved it. And I just went out into the garden and cried, because after 3 years of trying to get people to understand what the hell I was talking about, that was a good time. And one of the key users here has actually written 51 A4 pages of comments inside the game and spent 25 hours doing it. So it's basically working. So go to cloudchambermystery.com and you can see the intro film there, and it will, in 3 minutes, explain what I just spent 25 minutes explaining. Thank you.